How many of you absolutely love small talk? Or how many of all of us think that it's a good idea to kind of waste our time chit-chatting when there's important work to do? So when you are a gifted person at work, understand that you see the world differently. You're ahead of the curve by nature. You're different by design. Give yourself permission to follow your own heart's desire and to follow your own joy and your own happiness. Hi, friends, it's Diane, and today we're going to talk about gifted people in the workplace. That's right, gifted people at work. Now, a lot of us who are gifted also have ADHD and other neurodivergences, so it's going to be a blend, this show, of these things. Now, this show comes to you because it's been requested so many times, but also because I have current clients, friends, and colleagues who are dealing with being gifted in the workplace. In fact, I experienced some of these same things I'm going to talk about, both in my history and currently in different work situations. And so it's very interesting to kind of notice how we gifted people navigate a work setting. Now, one of the first things that comes to mind is our executive processing, our functioning on our executive level, right? Some of us go really fast. Some people ponder and then they come out with whatever they want to say. But we all process at a different rate than neurotypical people. And so sometimes it will be a little bit off, or communication will be a little disjointed, or rapport might not be where we would like it to be because our processing is different. And then what about social skills, right? A lot of gifted people have struggle with social skills. How many of you absolutely love small talk? Like, really? Right? Or how many of all of us think that it's a good idea to kind of waste our time chit-chatting when there's important work to do? Now, we would consider it a waste. Other people might consider it building a connection. So there's a difference in all of that, right? I know chit-chat's okay for about 5 seconds, and then I'm done. I want to talk about what's really going on when I'm in a work mode, right? When I'm not in my social mode. Or sometimes our use of language, our sense of humor can often be not only not understood, but misunderstood. There's often times where I will use words and people will look at me and go, well, what does that mean? So we have to be careful sometimes of the words we use or the assumptions we make about how other people are keeping up with us. So in the workplace, a gifted person can feel siloed or ostracized, or maybe even singled out as not a part of the group. That happens. I have a client right now that I'm working with, and this person is visionary and can see all kinds of things that the other people on the team can't see, which is very valuable because the kind of work this person does requires forward thinking, requires being ahead of the curve in order to be successful. So this person was hired for that gift, and that's part of their giftedness. Well, what happens is, as this person does exactly what they were hired to do, and giving suggestions and writing things in a way that helps people understand that things can be communicated differently and all of those things, this person keeps getting ostracized more and more and singled out more and more and more. And I think even some of the upper management are a bit threatened. And so therefore, there's the passive aggressiveness and the gaslighting and the attacks and all of these things when the person is just doing what they were hired to do. And so sometimes somebody might hire one of us thinking that they're getting one thing, and they get this plus this over here, and they don't know what to do with it. So what are we supposed to do? Because we can't just cut ourselves in half. You know, sometimes I say, have a dimmer switch in your mind, and all right, well, this particular job only needs 10% of me, so I'll bring 10% of me, and then the rest of me can stay home or do whatever. Now, that's a good short-term kind of answer to be able to function through a day or function through a meeting. But none of us want to be working in a situation where all of our skills and abilities and ideas and visionary talents and all those things are ignored, or even worse, demeaned or put down. So what are we going to do? How are we going to handle it, right? Because most work places. Most places where there's lots of people have more neurotypical people and then gifted. And so it can be a little tricky. And one rule of thumb is that the company, the business that you all are working for, that we all work for, right, has one agenda in mind, and that is keep the money flowing, keep the flow going, to stay open, keep the doors open, even if it costs a person or two. And so the bigger the company, the less important the person you are, right? Because it's all about keeping the company open. So if you bring up an idea or you expose a vulnerability of the company that they don't want to see, the management doesn't want to see, it's convenient to blame you for pointing it out or to coming up with the idea, even if they asked for it. I have one person that was asked for it. Their company had big meetings and had everybody do like a mind meld kind of thing of all these great ideas. And this person gave all these great ideas. And everyone said, these are really great ideas. Thank you so much. And it was in short order, less than a couple weeks. And this person was getting scapegoated and gaslit and all kinds of challenges that we had to work through because the ideas that came up threatened the status quo. And so when we work for a company that verbalizes being progressive, but yet is married to the status quo in order to stay open or out of some kind of fear, us gifted people end up in a big quandary. Now, everyone is in a quandary. We just feel it differently, especially if you have an emotional overexcitability, or especially if you have ADHD, or especially if you're intuitive and you can feel things with your empathy skills. It's a very big deal. And I see people trying to push through and force their way or force the company to change to accommodate them. And sadly, that rarely happens unless it's a small company or unless you own the company. Now, I own my company now, and I remember when I've worked for other people in large and in small companies. Often, I was hired for my genius with creating unique programs for people to help them with addiction and co-occurring disorders, meaning mental health and addiction. I was sought out as an expert in doing that. And I'm still very good at custom programming. Well, what happened was I would create the custom programs. I would teach people how to orchestrate the program. And then what would happen is that the company that I was working for often would start to scapegoat me or turn on me or gaslight me or whatever it was. And my sense of justice and my sense of doing the right thing by the client or the patient became more and more prevalent because the real undisclosed motive of some of these places was staying open and how much money can I make. The patient or client came next. Well, I think the patient and client comes first, and the money comes if you do a good job and help the people. So that belief system difference created issues. And my sense of social justice created even more issues, right? So it was a little tricky. So I remember very clearly when I started Visions Applied back in 2013, saying, I know how to help people. I'm gifted. I get it. I'm intuitive. I'm empathic. I have skills that nobody else has. People have told me over and over, I'm an anomaly. You've heard the same thing about you. There's no one like you. I wish I could figure out how you think. Oh, don't be so sensitive. Don't be so analytical. Can't you just fit in with the social structure here? All of those things are pointing to the fact that you bring something beautiful and unique to the table that the people around you don't know what to do with. So we have choices. One choice we have is not working in that place anymore. Another choice we have is learning how to navigate those often tricky situations. We learn how to shift our social skills, or we learn how to pay attention to what's really most important. A question I ask myself a lot is this, whatever the situation is it going to matter in 2 years or 5 years? Is it really going to matter? Because sometimes my sense of justice will show up in a big way on something that may not matter in 2 years or 5 years. It feels like it matters urgently right then, but may not matter in the long run, really. So I have to be honest with myself and say, okay, is this sense of justice a long-term thing or an immediate thing, or both? Now, there's no wrong answer. The key here is to have clarity within us so we know how to act outside, right? We want to have an inner locus of control. So inside we are clear so that our behavior and our words and our actions line up with our authentic self. So if it's not going to matter in a few years, then I may want to adjust my being really into the justice part of it. Same thing with other situations. One of the things I think about is building rapport and having connection with my coworkers. So sometimes I would ask myself back then, if I didn't work here anymore, would I still want to be friends or friendly or have a relationship with these people, good or bad or indifferent, right? Would I still want that? And if the answer is, well, not really. I mean, we really don't have much in common other than the workplace. So I want to be realistic about that. Because sometimes some people think that because we're friendly at work, that we're friends. I know I used to think that when I was younger. I used to think, well, because everybody's friendly, we're all friends. That's not true necessarily. Sometimes we build lasting friendships, but sometimes a person's just friendly, and a gifted person can misinterpret the social cues or misinterpret the motivation from that other person. And then what happens is things get a little bit weird. If the person doesn't pay enough attention to you at work, or they don't invite you to a party or something, because you would think as a friend you would get invited. In their mind, they're being friendly to you at work, but they're not necessarily your friend. So you're not in the same social circles. You see, there's so many things about being a gifted person in the workplace. That's just everywhere, right? In fact, I think one of the most helpful things we can do for ourselves is to breathe and catch ourselves when we're holding our breath, and to understand that we are in the minority. Gifted people are in the minority. There's only 1.5%, 2% of us in the world. And so if you have a large workplace, there might be a couple people like you in it. Now, if you're in a very niche kind of work, like medicine or some areas of research, things like that, the probability is that the percentage of gifted people in your group will be higher than the average, right? Because of the nature of the work. And so we want to understand that in order for us to be connected, in order for us to have what we need and feel fulfilled in our work, that we want to feel understood, and we want to seek to understand others. It's one thing for us to want everyone to understand us, but we also want to understand them. Sometimes that's a stretch. Sometimes we're trying to understand a neurotypical thing or something that's outside of our comfort zone, and it feels really difficult in our skin. And yet, because we're gifted and because we're talented, we are able, 100% able, to build rapport, to say the right thing, and to be connected in a way that's meaningful. That does not mean we're best friends. It means we can build rapport and we can have a working relationship that functions. It takes a lot of effort for us. Now, most of us gifted people also are introverted. Introversion adds a whole nother layer on it, because if we're in a company setting where there's a lot of engagement with people, introverted people like myself need quiet time afterwards, or maybe need breaks during the day. So one treatment center I was the director of, I instituted a midday reset meditation. In fact, it's on my Meditations for Visionary Leaders podcast, a reset meditation, meaning at around 1:00, we turned everything off. And if you were in the building, we went into the group room and we just meditated. I played some soft music. Sometimes I would guide one. But it was the ability in the time set aside to recalibrate and reset so that when we came out of there at 1:15, it was a new day. It helped me, the introverted person who was always getting pulled in different directions as the director, to realign and recenter. And it also helped everyone else to start over, to breathe, and to be in a more congruent place for the rest of the afternoon. In fact, I had this thing that if you were in the building, I didn't care if you were a delivery driver or a guest or whoever you were. If you were in the building, you got to meditate with us. So more than once, the UPS driver or the FedEx driver, they were dragged into the group room, and they were so thankful at the end because they had 15 minutes where they could have downtime. And I think in this world where there is so much input and so much distraction and so much stuff happening, I think it's very useful for us to be able to take some time out and relax or breathe, maybe, right? I think that's important. And so a gifted person in the workplace might need that, might need different sensory information or experiences. I don't like fluorescent lights, and I don't know a gifted person who does. I also don't respond very well to harsh sounds, like things that are very loud. I remember one time I was volunteering at a facility, and there was somebody whose phone had some weird ring on it, and it was ringing a lot on and off. And I was like, oh, this is so difficult. And then I finally found the person who had the phone, and I said, do you mind turning that volume down just a little bit? There's a shrill in it that hurts my ears. And the person was very cooperative. But I was really nervous about asking for that accommodation from that person who didn't even really know me. So it's important as you work in the world that you realize the landscape of where you work, that you realize the company expectations and desires and goals, that you realize that just because you're gifted doesn't mean you get extra goodness attaboys. You might have more challenges to deal with. And the other thing that comes to mind when I think about that is that we can think that we are something special because we are. And the system may not notice and may not care. So sometimes we have to get our reward, our understanding, our connection outside of our work. And that is actually preferable in a lot of ways to give us balance in our lives. Remember that your sense of humor is going to be different than most of the people that are around you. I can tell a joke sometimes, and only the gifted people in the room will laugh right away, and the other people might figure it out soon. It just depends. So one of the things we want to do is realize, just think about yourself for a moment. Realize, how is your humor, your communication style? Are you comfortable with direct eye contact? How about your voice volume? Do you speak softly? Or like some ADHD people, they talk really loud like this. And so maybe tone it down a little bit, right? Do you speak with your hands a lot, or are you more still? How do you prefer to engage with people? Is it verbally, in writing, or both? Think about the things that are important to you that create a safe, healthy work environment for you. Because what can happen if you get scapegoated, what can happen if you get siloed, or you point out things other people don't want to see, is it could become a toxic or unsafe work environment. And those, my friend, are things to take very seriously. I have a friend of mine right now who is working in a situation that's quite toxic because this person's a little bit forward thinking. This person is a visionary, and this person can see solutions that the people in middle management right above her don't want to see. And so no matter what she wants to do, or her good ideas, or her sense of justice, no matter what they say, they're not going to act. And that's hard for us to realize because we want the truth and integrity. And when somebody says, that's a good idea, let's do it, we get excited. And then when they turn right around and say, bad idea, no, we're not going to, or it's a good idea, but we're not going to, any of those answers, that disappointment is often taken personally by a gifted person. We take it personally when really it's not personal about us. It's personal about them. Hear it again. When those things happen at work, it is personal, but it's not about you. It feels like it's about you. It's not. It's about the other person, or about the motive of the company. This person's idea would have been really amazing. It was a great idea. I've heard all about it. And the middle management people didn't want to do anything any different. They didn't want to change. They're stuck in a rut and gave a bunch of lip service in the beginning. But when it came down to acting on it, just ghosted, which was very painful to my friend, because that person, my friend, believed these people all along. Now, I think that maybe those people kind of wanted to on some level, but then were afraid. I don't want to assign a motive of intentional dishonesty, but it does feel kind of sticky, right? The boundaries feel sticky, the outcome feels sticky. So when you are a gifted person at work, understand that you see the world differently. You're ahead of the curve by nature. You're different by design. I say that because it's very important to understand you are designed this way. So if you're unhappy or the workplace is toxic, give yourself permission to maybe journal and start to say, okay, what is the ideal work environment for me? What is it that will be happening in my work where I will thrive and feel safe? And begin to put a form to it. Begin to talk to trusted others. Most of my clients are working on these kinds of levels with me right now so that they can have the safety and desires of their heart taken care of. Because we deserve to be safe psychologically, emotionally, physically. And a toxic work environment will create a lack of safety in our being. That's not the goal. So it's okay to say this toxic situation isn't going to change. So what I can do is I can begin to create and journal and talk about options and opportunities that I will be able to thrive in, places and companies and ideas that feed your heart. It may not be a big company. You might be meant to start your own company, or you might be in a position where somebody invites you to come alongside them, kind of like a partner in a way. There's lots of options. But the key is that your assets are used in a way that's fulfilling and satisfying, and that it's not a toxic place, that it's a pleasant, wonderful experience. I just did an interview for this podcast not long ago, and one of the things the woman said was her work doesn't feel like work. It's just beautiful. It flows. And yes, we all have our hard days, but generally speaking, that's how it is. And that's what I wish for you. The understanding that you're beautiful, you're competent, and you have things going on for you that many people wish they could have. And so sometimes there's jealousy, or sometimes people just don't get it. So use myself or other mentors as ways to translate some of our own quirkiness into a system that we may really love to work in, but not really sure how to navigate, or change the system. Give yourself permission to follow your own heart's desire and to follow your own joy and your own happiness. Remember the question, is it going to matter in 2 or 5 years? If the answer is an absolutely, check yourself and ask yourself if you're working on changing something that maybe doesn't matter, it'll work itself out. Check it out. I hope some of these tips have helped you. Hope some of these ideas have helped you. But the key here to being a gifted person in the workplace is to learn how to navigate the relationships and the responsibilities. Balance your emotions, your intellect, and your sense of justice. Allow yourself to make changes as needed for your own satisfaction, safety, and welfare. Because you, my friend, are beautiful, competent, lovable, and capable. And until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, keep your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a mighty purpose. And I support you in seeking the work that feeds your soul. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, be well.